They say greed is the only fire that burns its owner before it reaches its victim. If you doubt those words, then listen carefully. Because this is the story of a son who became so wealthy that he bought his own father, not knowing the chains he fastened around another man's wrist would one day tighten around his own soul. More the elders of Umudike still lower their voices whenever this tale is told.
This is not merely
Not
a story.
because it is too painful,
It is a warning for us all.
but because it is too possible. Morning sunlight spilled over the clay rooftops like melted gold, while roosters announced another day with enough confidence to believe they personally invented the sunrise. Women swept dusty compounds with long palm brooms, children chased stubborn goats through narrow footpaths, and smoke poured lazily from cooking fires. At the edge of the village stood the modest hut of Eze Okoro. Everyone respected him. Not because he owned land. Not because he carried titles. But because his word was straighter than an arrow carved by a patient hunter. If he says rain is coming, the villagers often joked, even the clouds start discussing it. His greatest treasure was not hidden beneath his floor. It answered to the name Chibuzo. His only son. Every father dreams his child will become taller than his own shadow. He's dreamed even bigger. He sold half his farmland to send Chibuzo to the city for school. He skipped meals so the boy could buy books. He repaired neighbors' roofs beneath the scorching sun while pretending he wasn't hungry. Whenever anyone questioned his sacrifices, he smiled. A child is a seed, he would say. If I must become the soil so he may become a tree, then let the rain bury me. Those words warmed every heart. Except one. Chibuzo's. The city changed him. Knowledge entered his head. Pride entered his heart. And pride always pays rent to greed. Years later, a convoy of gleaming black vehicles rode into Umudike, raising enough dust to make the village chickens question whether another harmattan had arrived early. Children screamed with excitement. Women whispered. Men adjusted their wrappers. It must be a governor. No. A prince. Maybe a foreign investor. Then the first car door opened. Out stepped Chibuzo. Tailored suit. Gold wristwatch. Expensive shoes that had never greeted village mud. Dark sunglasses large enough to hide not only his eyes but perhaps his conscience. His father rushed forward. My son. Chibuzo hesitated. Only for a heartbeat. Then he forced a smile and embraced the old man as someone might hug a borrowed chair. Polite. Careful. Temporary. The villagers ignored the awkwardness. Success, they believed, often made city people forget small customs. Little did they know. That was only the beginning. For 3 days Chibuzo distributed money. He donated bags of rice. Promised scholarships. Paid hospital bills. The village praised him endlessly. But every gift carried invisible strings. He wasn't giving from gratitude. He was buying admiration. Even a masquerade cannot dance forever without someone noticing the human feet beneath. The first person to notice was Mama Nwaka, the oldest woman in Umudike. She watched Chibuzo scold his father for speaking broken English before visitors. She saw him refuse to eat from the same wooden bowl Eze used. One evening she whispered to Eze, "Your son's pocket has grown fatter than his heart." Eze only laughed. A river sometimes forgets where it began. One day it remembers. But rivers do not always return. Several weeks later, Chibuzo announced another visit. This time, he arrived with lawyers, businessmen, and documents. I've bought thousands of hectares outside the city, he declared proudly. A luxury agricultural estate. The villagers applauded. He smiled proudly. My son has done well. Then Chibuzo cleared his throat. I also need workers. His eyes settled on his father. Baba, you've always loved farming. The sentence sounded harmless. Like a snake resting quietly beneath dry leaves. I'll pay you. The villagers chuckled. Father and son laughing about work. How beautiful. Then the contracts appeared. Complex. Lengthy. Covered in legal language that frightened even the school teacher. It's only employment paperwork, Chibuzo assured. Eze could barely read. He trusted his son. He pressed his thumb onto the paper. That single thumbprint echoed louder than thunder. Because it wasn't an employment contract. It was a debt agreement. Hidden inside the papers was a clause transferring ownership of Eze's remaining farmland to Chibuzo as collateral against fabricated business loans. Within weeks, officials arrived. The land was seized. The hut was claimed. Everything Eze owned legally belonged to his son. And because he supposedly owed an enormous debt, he had to work without pay until it was repaid. A debt that never existed. The villagers protested. The officials displayed stamped documents. Everything appeared legal. Justice wore a blindfold. Greed wore a necktie. He stared silently at his son. You tricked me. Chibuzo avoided his eyes. It is business. Business. Such a small word. Capable of hiding monstrous things. The journey to the estate felt longer than exile. Towering gates welcomed luxury. Beautiful gardens. Marble buildings. Imported fountains. Everything sparkled. Except humanity. Workers rose before dawn. Labored until darkness. Many had fallen into similar fraudulent contracts. Some were widows. Others elderly. One blind man sorted harvested peppers by touch alone. Even suffering had different uniforms. Yet Eze never complained. He worked quietly. Sharing food. Encouraging others. Repairing broken tools. The workers soon called him Papa. Kindness is strange. The more you spend it, the richer it becomes. Meanwhile, Chibuzo's empire expanded. Television interviews. Magazine covers. Awards. Politicians shook his hand. Pastors blessed him. Influencers praised his generosity. Only one person refused to clap. His wife. Eze Okoro. She had discovered old family photographs hidden inside a storage box. One picture stopped her breathing. Young Chibuzo. Small. Laughing. Sitting on Eze's shoulders. Behind the picture were handwritten words. Everything I own belongs to my son. May he never know the pain of carrying burdens alone. She confronted him. Is Papa really one of your laborers? He signed. You tricked him. He agreed. They are different. No. They are not. Silence stretched across the room until even the expensive clock seemed afraid to tick. Then Eze Okoro packed her belongings. I married a man. She looked directly into his eyes. I refused to sleep beside a transaction. She left. But that wasn't the worst part. Months later, an elderly traveler arrived seeking temporary work. His name was Onima. He recognized Eze immediately. Eze. The old farmer smiled. Brother. Years earlier they had traded crops together across neighboring villages. After hearing everything, Onima's face hardened. I attended the meeting where your land records were processed. Eze looked up. What meeting? The documents were forged before you ever touched them. Those words struck harder than any whip. Someone else knew. Someone alive. Someone who had seen everything. The truth had found legs. Onima secretly carried copies of registry papers proving signatures had been altered before reaching government offices. He had kept them after suspecting corruption. Now they had purpose. But danger traveled faster than honesty. One of Chibuzo's supervisors overheard their conversation. By sunset, the documents had disappeared. And Onima had vanished. Workers whispered. Some believed he escaped. Others feared something darker. He spread quietly beneath a lonely mango tree. Truth may walk slowly, farther above, but let it not lose the road. Then something unexpected happened. A little girl named Amoka, whose mother worked in the estate kitchen, approached him. I saw them. Saw who? The men. They took the old traveler. She pointed toward an abandoned warehouse beyond the cassava fields. Night arrived wrapped in uneasy silence. 3 trusted workers followed Eze. Inside the warehouse they found Onyime tied to a wooden pillar. Bruised. Hungry. Alive. He laughed weakly. I've survived worse goats than these men. Even in misery, Africans somehow find jokes hiding beneath suffering. Together they escaped before dawn. By sunrise they were already heading toward Umudike. The annual New Yam festival had begun. The entire community gathered. Drums rolled like approaching thunder. Masquerades danced. Palm wine flowed. Even arguments took the day off. Chibuzo arrived as guest of honor. Chiefs welcomed him. The village choir sang. He smiled confidently. Victory tasted sweet. Until the village bell rang 3 times. Every elder turned. Eze walked slowly into the square. Beside him stood Onyime. Behind them came government investigators. And finally, Eze Okoro. She had quietly reported everything weeks earlier after discovering suspicious financial records hidden inside Chibuzo's private office. The square fell silent. So silent that even the wind seemed unwilling to interrupt. The lead investigator lifted a folder. We have evidence of forged contracts. Gasps. Illegal land seizures. Whispers. Forced labor. Complete silence. One by one, documents were displayed. Original land records. Forged versions. Bank transfers. Witness testimonies. Every lie collapsed beneath the weight of truth. Chibuzo laughed nervously. This is jealousy. Then Onyime stepped forward. I watched you pay officials. Another witness emerged. A lawyer confessed. Then one frightened clerk. Soon the lies scattered like frightened birds before a hunter's drumbeat. Chibuzo looked toward his father. Baba. It was the first time in months he had used that word. Please. Eze's eyes glistened. I prayed every night that my son would return. He paused. I never imagined he would return only after losing everything. The investigators placed iron handcuffs around Chibuzo's wrist. The sound echoed across the square. Not loudly, but deeply. Like justice clearing its throat. His businesses were confiscated. The fraudulent contracts cancelled. Workers freed. Land returned. Corrupt officials arrested. The luxurious estate became a cooperative owned by the laborers who had once suffered there. As for Chibuzo, he served years performing community labor under the very laws he once manipulated. No servants. No private office. No expensive suits. Only honest work beneath the same unforgiving sun his father had endured. Every swing of the hoe reminded him that dignity cannot be purchased. It must be earned. When he was finally released, he returned to Umudike carrying nothing except regret. He found his father planting yam seedlings. Without speaking, Chibuzo knelt. The silence lasted so long that nearby birds resumed singing. Finally he whispered, I sold my soul before I sold your freedom. Eze helped him stand. I lost land. He placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. But I refused to lose my son forever. Forgiveness did not erase consequences. Trust returned slowly. Like grass growing after wildfire. Some villagers forgave. Others never did. Eze Okoro eventually returned, not because wealth had returned, but because humility had. Together they rebuilt their lives through honest farming. Chibuzo worked beside the laborers he once commanded. He ate from the same bowls, sweated beneath the same sun, shared the same laughter. Children born years later often asked why their father bowed respectfully whenever Eze entered the room. He would simply answer, "Because the richest man I ever met owned nothing except integrity." And every New Yam festival thereafter, the elders repeated the tale beneath ancient Iroko trees while children listened with wide eyes. Not to shame Chibuzo, not to glorify suffering, but to remind every generation that betrayal wears many disguises. Sometimes it arrives carrying a knife. Sometimes it arrives carrying legal documents. And sometimes it calls you father. The elders always ended with this proverb: a child who sells his father's dignity may inherit his father's land, but he will never inherit his father's peace. Wealth built on betrayal is a palace with no foundation, and when truth finally knocks, even the strongest gates cannot keep it outside.